Hey folks, this is Jake Davis bringing a video for you. Anyhow, today I'm talking about the top 5 villains in horror film, the history of horror film. Now, spoilers ahead, for massive spoilers, multiple spoilers. Because there's so many great villains in horror movies, this is really hard to kind of break down to just even my personal favorites. So I kind of broke them down categorically. And so even though it's a top 5, I'm doing individuals. Each individual kind of represents their own category, and I'll talk about those as I go. Also, no hordes, like no zombies, no alien invasion, as well as no inanimate objects. As creepy as the Overlook Hotel and the Lasser Glass are, they're not really characters. They're just just conduits of the evil. Anyhow, 5th place, representing whodunits and slashers. Yeah, sure, you can always have the big, bulking, mute monster like Jason Voorhees or Michael Myers, or the deeply troubling, mysterious killer like the Phantom Killer in Town That Dread Sundown. But for this one, I wanted to go with Billy and Stu from Scream. I definitely like biased because last week I did a whole video, a retro review covering the film. It's one of my favorite films, definitely one of my favorite horror films. But yeah, one of the things that's always worked for me is that the reason I picked him is Scream is a rewarding film to rewatch and revisit, because like many other whodunits, it kind of feels like they just figured out on the fly who the killer was going to be. This seems very intricate, where there's constant red herrings all over the place, but at the same time, when you go back and see the movie, it's very obvious and very precise who the killers are, and it all works and comes together in such a neat, tight little film. Yeah, it's just Billy and Stu are definitely my top ones, not only because of the reveal, but the whole sequence. It's a brilliant sequence, and yeah, it's a great film. Great villains. Number 4, Living Nightmares. I've always been a really cool thing, and this was definitely the densest fucking category I had to try to pick through. I mean, think of the kind of things that can only come out of imagination and you can only really see in film, like Freddy Krueger, Mr. Babadook, Pinhead, even the creature, the assimilating creature from The Thing. But my top one's got to be Pennywise. Pennywise the Dancing Clown. Now, performance-wise, Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise in the 2 theatrical films is probably my favorite horror performance of all time, as a monster at least. I mean, as years go on, Pennywise will probably even climb this list all the way to number 1 for me personally. I loved his performance, and always been a great character. Tim Curry was great, of course, but if you know my channel, I try to stick to the theatrical films, theatrical work. That's why I never did a review for Roma, because fuck that movie. That's a Netflix movie, and shouldn't even qualify for Oscars. Anyhow, number 3. I wanted to go with Inspired by True Events. You know what I mean? Get this thing off my screen. Anyhow, Inspired by True Events. It's you think of real life madmen and monsters, like say oh, there's something. Someone texted me trying to get that. Sorry. Trying to get something off my screen without fucking up my video here. Anyhow, yeah, Inspired by True Events. Guys like Gacy, Dahmer, Bundy. They've all had Starkweather. They've all had films made about them specifically that varied on reality. But the truth is, I always prefer the more inspired things, because when you watch a movie like a movie about someone like Jeffrey Dahmer, and you see the scene of the guy getting hit with a dumbbell, or the kid who almost got away, it's like it takes out the fun for the horror movie, because this happened. This happened to somebody. Somebody died this horrible way, and it doesn't make it fun anymore for me. It's still a good movie, but I'm trying to have a good time here. So yeah, I prefer the inspired ones. I don't think any serial killer ever had a bigger effect on film inspiration or pop culture inspiration than Ed Gein. Ed Gein was a killer, I believe, in the 1930s, maybe even earlier than that. Killed a couple women up in Minnesota or North Dakota, up there where it's too goddamn cold to live. But I've been up there. It's cold. I don't want to go back ever. Anyhow, yeah, the Leatherface, Buffalo Bill were both inspired. You know, loosely inspired, but still obviously inspired by the case of Ed Gein. But none of them was more inspiring than Norman Bates. Norman Bates, the mama's boy, Mrs. Bates. Now, in both my Hitchcock video and my top 5 favorite horror films way back last Halloween, I talked about... I intentionally avoided spoilers for Psycho because I think Psycho is one of those movies if you've never had a chance to see it and you don't know the ending, for the love of God, see it while you can. But yeah, it's Anthony Perkins' brilliant performance, backed by Elmer Bernstein's score, and some of the best, maybe the best filmmaking in the history of the medium. I would put Hitchcock's work on Psycho up against anything. Orson Welles' Citizen Kane, John Ford's The Searchers, anything Spielberg's ever made. I think it is the best work of a filmmaker of all time, Psycho. And Norman Bates is iconic, legendary, chilling character, and so fucking pathetic. I guess I shouldn't really get into too much detail about what exactly Norman does, because if you haven't seen it, I've already given you away the ending, but it's not really a mystery. That's why he wasn't in the whodunits. It's not really a surprise that Norman's a killer. It's what he's doing, why he's doing it, what drives him. It's the madness behind it all that's really the twist and surprise towards the end of the film. Anyhow, number 2. Giant monsters and humanoid creatures. Now, you already know where I'm going with this, you know. King Kong is a piece of American pop culture. The Predator was one of my favorite fucking visual images from film in the 1980s. But, I mean, when you talk about giant monsters, you gotta talk about the Japanese horror films. And there's nothing that comes close to Godzilla. Godzilla, the king of the monsters, Godzilla. He's been in over 24 movies, and, you know, if you think you've seen them all, you probably haven't, because there's so much fucking Godzilla out there. And even, yes, in modern films, the States, we've put out 3 Godzilla movies using CGI to create Godzilla. They were what they were. The more recent 2 were really fun, in my opinion, especially when they came out this summer. But holy shit, man, the fact that Godzilla has endured for so long, so congestedly, and still beloved, and people still want more Godzilla. Can't wait for more fucking Godzilla. It just is a testament to his greatness and his presence. He's a walking force of nature, a walking death, badass. And whether he's the villain or he's the hero, you still kind of root for him. And I would definitely, if you haven't seen the original film from 1954, Godzilla King of the Monsters, it stands out for multiple reasons. Of course, it's in black and white. Of course, it's a very straightforward horror film. It's an excellent film. I've seen it many times over the years. But them Godzilla movies are great. I'd recommend seeing just about any one of them. But the 3 definitely I would suggest would be the original King of the Monsters, King Kong vs. Godzilla for just fun sakes, and of course Godzilla. Oh, I can never get the title right. The All Out War one. You know, they've remade it at least twice. But yeah, that's the one. That's the one to watch. Actually, I guess any one of those 3 versions of that one story. Which brings me to my number 1. Number 1 is easily, for me, the Universal horror monsters. And now, probably a lot of people, I mean, from like young people now to my age to even my parents' age, really discovered horror movies by discovering the Universal horror movies. The great aesthetic and look and kind of timeless feel where people dressed and used technology at the time that the movie was made, but very Victorian in its scope and concept and style. And then you think of the performances, you know, Boris Karloff as the Frankenstein monster, Don Chaney Jr. as the Wolfman, Claude Rains as the Invisible Man. They're all so great, but, you know, the one that stands out is Bela Lugosi as Count Dracula. Count Dracula, I mean, there's probably been as many movies about Dracula than any other fictitious character ever created, and that's probably fucking dead on true. Dracula is been portrayed by many guys. I personally don't enjoy the one a lot of people my age love. I don't like Bram Stoker's Dracula. I didn't like Gary Oldman in it. I think Christopher Lee is great as Dracula, but to me the ultimate Dracula is Bela Lugosi. People who've never seen Bela Lugosi play Dracula can do an impression of Bela Lugosi's Dracula. And it wasn't just his Dracula. He was a great movie monster in general. He had a career as the scary guy in movies. Even when he wasn't the villain, he was always the scary dude. I mean, his performances as Igor in Son of Frankenstein, as his Dr. Murder in White Zombie, he was a cinematic icon, and he was all R's. He was all horror. And there's lots of other monsters, films and stuff I could have talked about. Like, for example, I didn't really know where to put in characters like Martin. Because Martin's a fascinating character to me. If you never know, it's a Tobe Hooper film. No, not Tobe Hooper. George A. Romero film from the earlier mid-'70s. And it's basically about a young man who believes he's a vampire, but he has, no power, no strength, none of that kind of thing. Can't hypnotize women, can't do any of that shit, but he's a vampire. He murders people and he feeds on their blood, and he also rapes their corpses. It's a twisted fucking movie. But there's Martin, and there's an old man, and they're the only people in the world who believe Martin's a vampire, and they're both batshit crazy. So you never really know what's going on in the movie, but it is brilliant. It is masterful. It's a great, great horror movie. And then there's the same thing with, I forget his name, the creature from Funhouse movie. I've always loved the creature. I always thought it was just terrifying. But where he's not really a humanoid creature, I mean, he's a man, he's just a freak. It was really cool. But anyways, that was my list. Those are my 5 favorite horror villains. I could probably even do a second volume on this. There's so many to go through. But I had a lot of fun doing this and coming up with this. It is Halloween. I mean, it is October. It's Halloween season. I personally have been celebrating since Friday the 13th last month. So this is my 3rd of these seasonal Halloween top 5 videos. I'm going to try to get a few more out there. I did my top 5 favorite Friday the 13th films, my top 5 favorite Hitchcock films, and now, of course, my top 5 favorite horror movie villains. I hope y'all enjoyed this. Hope you come back for my next video. My planned next top 5 for Halloween will be the top 5 horror movies of the 70s. Anyhow, please like, share, subscribe, comment, all that juicy good stuff. Please get involved. I'm Jake Davis, and I'll catch you on the fly.